How do you run a webinar that doesn't suck for your MSP? Now, truth be told, this video was prompted because I attended a webinar that was brutal to sit through. And I took down a lot of notes about what went wrong and why it flopped. Now, I want to make this video and I'm making this video so that way you at your MSP can run a successful webinar, but also get a bunch of people in the webinar because both of those things are really, really important for having a good turn up rate, but also conversions into new paying customers. So you're going to want to stick through the entirety of this video because there's a ton of really good information in it, and a lot of it is going to help, if not all of it, your MSP grow. How are you doing? My name is Harrison Barron from growth-generators.com. We help MSPs grow, whether it's sales training, marketing training, or even some business operations. Before I get into today's video, I do want to mention, just head over to our website, growth-generators.com. If you head over there, there's a ton of information over there. Our programs that are designed to help MSPs grow, whether you're a brand new MSP just starting out or an MSP that's established looking for sales training, marketing training, operations, tons of free resources, or I shouldn't say free, but included in there, as well as a CRM. But also, we have a bunch of free resources. So if you head over to the resources area, click on resources, you'll see here some helpful videos as well as tons of helpful things that will help you build your MSP business, from, if you're a newbie, an acronym sheet to an onboarding checklist, all the way to a sales sheet, and truly so much more. I will leave links down below in the video description or the podcast description if you're listening to it on the podcast, so that way you can go grab those. So let's talk about what went wrong in this webinar, because I want to give you guys as much information as I possibly can so that way you can be effective when it comes to building a great webinar throughout this process. Now, I don't know where this all started, but MSPs have this idea that they could steal vendor stuff and use it. And that's fine, right? There's plenty of great vendors out there, Ninja One to Super Ops. There's truly amazing vendors out there. And the vendors are doing the right thing. They're creating content and webinars and things like that for you at your MSP to actually use. But it's clear that when you steal their stuff, there's a lot of things that go wrong. You have to think, these vendors, right? Doesn't matter what vendor it is, these vendors are making great content. But if you don't take that content and make it your own, it falls. It suffers truly, really, really, really badly. And right off the bat, it looks overly polished. Now, I'm not saying you need to have the most polished or you shouldn't have a fairly polished webinar, but your webinar should be clean, cohesive, and feel like you built it. For example, you have your own personality. I have my own personality. It would be really weird if I went through and used your webinar and tried to present it. Now, I might have enough experience to make it sound great, but it wouldn't flow the way that I would want it to flow. Just like if you stole my webinar, you'd probably be all over the place. Poor presentation is probably the worst thing that I saw. And it's not anyone's fault, but it's also everyone's fault, because the vendor was providing clearly the presentation, but also the MSP didn't rehearse it. They stumbled through the entire thing, including the slides, and it had really awkward moments throughout it because they didn't take it and make it theirs. There was no personalization throughout this process, and it felt like a more generic pitch and not valuable, not engaging, and really lackluster. I almost tuned it out at one point because I was like so bored with it, because it didn't feel like even the presenter was excited about it. Then, about halfway through, they passed the keys to the castle over to the vendor. Clearly, it was a vendor supported thing. And the vendor ended up taking over about half to three quarters of the webinar. Now, there's nothing against this vendor. It's actually a great vendor, and I'm a big fan of them. But especially when the vendor took over, it became a much, much, much deeper sales pitch. And when you're presenting, you want to make sure that there's times where the audience, right, the people attending, can ask good questions, they can engage with certain things. And yes, it's a little bit harder on a digital platform, truly, but There was not a single Q&A because the entire presentation didn't let your mind wander to say like, "Oh, what if I took this idea or I could see how my business would use this," right? It was pretty rough. And arguably the worst part about the entire thing, and I hate starting with the worsts, but it was something I saw the thing and I said, I have to make this tomorrow's. I had another video planned and another video planned, and this took promotion or took first place because I didn't want another day to go by that you as an MSP fail. But also, there was a tremendously poor effort for promotion of this. I really saw it in one place, and that was it. So, and I'm not going to give any context clues of who it was because I don't want them to watch this video and be like, oh, he's talking about us or anything like that. But it's not just this one. This one just happened to be the one that triggered this. I see it all over the place. It is horrendous how bad webinars have gotten, and it's actually costing you and your MSP a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and worse than anything, a lot of money. Because if you're putting all of this work into this and it completely flops, that's just a complete waste. There was a really lack of effort on the promotion side. And I knew this because half of the people that were in that webinar worked for the company, right? So it's important to take these away. So let's talk about how to actually run a webinar that works the way that you want it. That when people show up, they get value and they say, "Hey, sign me up," or "I'd like to learn a little bit more about this." First and foremost, you have to plan and rehearse this. You have to set a clear objective throughout this process. What does an attendee want to learn? If you don't know what your audience wants to learn, there's no way you're going to succeed. So let's talk about how to run a webinar that actually works, that gets people excited, gets people engaged, and is going to help you as an MSP make more money because that's what you want at the end of the day. You want to get people in the webinar, they learn something, and then they say, "Hey, I want to learn more. I want to sign up for your services," something of that nature. So the first and foremost, most important thing is we have to plan and we have to rehearse, right? We have to set a clear objective of what does our audience want, and we have to plan for that, right? Going through and building a webinar that our audience actually wants to learn, to know about. All of these things are super important, right? And once we do that, we want to rehearse it. Now, truth be told, there are times when I may or may not have jumped up on stage and only reviewed my webinar once, but I happen to be a fairly good presenter, and truth be told, doing YouTube for a living helps give me a pretty big advantage. But I cannot tell you how many people put together the first thing, and I'll just use the book $100 Million Leads because you guys all see it, I feel like, in all of my videos. But imagine going through, right? And this book was given to me by a great friend of mine. But imagine going through this and reading, "Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for allowing me to do the work I find meaningful." It almost sounds like a robot, right? And while that's not the worst thing in the world, it's also not the best thing in the world, right? We have to make sure that we rehearse it. Now, truth be told, on all the webinars that I build that you guys have watched, whether you're getting the new masterclass webinar, the pricing webinar, anything like that, the webinars that I build, I probably rehearse. First of all, I go through the better part of 20 or 30 times, but I also rehearse dozens and dozens of times. The latest webinar, the new masterclass for MSPs, I rehearsed it probably 40 or 50 times before it felt like it was just working. And I was like, that's the one I recorded. That's the one. I know it because I've recorded it so many times. And that was the one that just, it felt the best overall, right? You have to rehearse it at least a couple times. Know what you're going to say because a great webinar can work for you for months, if not years down the road. You're going to get new people in there. You can use that webinar, especially if you put the work in, and put it on replay. Give it away to people. Give it as a lead magnet. "Hey, we put this webinar together on XYZ thing. If you'd like to check it out, it's some of the best information that we have. Boom, here's a link for it." Literally, that's what we do on our webinars. There will be an example of a webinar down below if you want to check it out. We put a lot of effort into it, but we also make sure we know what you as the audience wants to watch. And we also have to have structure and flow. And this is probably where I really saw the lack of it. There was a light intro. I knew who the people were, so I didn't really need the intro, but Other people on that call, I don't know who they are. They might have needed an intro more than anybody else. Also, the value wasn't quite clear, right? The value of this video is you learning how to make a webinar that doesn't suck. That's the value of it. And you're going to learn all the tips and tricks to make a great webinar. You have to demonstrate it. You have to be able to demonstrate the knowledge, the implementation, giving really good background information, and ask for engagement. Yes, it's hard in the middle of the day getting people to watch a webinar and be excited about it, especially if it's a topic that they're not super interested in. But there's times where you can ask for feedback, just like in here, right? I ask for feedback and engagement. If you enjoy this video, if you're learning something, leave a comment down below. If you've built a webinar that's completely flopped, I want to know, and I hope that you learned something in this video to make the next one not flop, right? And then every webinar has to have a call to action. There has to be something afterwards. Now, I will say that this one's probably the easiest to do. And in the webinar I watched yesterday, they did that, right? But it's not very hard, right? My call to action in all of my videos is if you could do me a favor, hit that like, subscribe, notification bell. And that little notification bell, by the way, for those of you that don't know, lets you know when I upload a new video. So that way you can get the knowledge the moment it drops. And then we also have other calls to action in the video. I bring you guys over to our website, growth-generators.com. I mentioned check out our programs, the all-inclusive membership for MSP Heroes, the resources, the blog, Discord, YouTube, the podcasts, even events that we're going to be hosting, which there's going to be more going up. So there you go for that, right? But it's important to know that these things actually exist. And then the calls to action, right? I want you as an MSP to succeed. That's why we make these videos. But I also want you to take action, because if you don't take action, you're probably never going to grow your MSP business. So we have to make it engaging, right? Throughout that, you have to tell stories. Now on YouTube, this whole thing is a story for the most part, right? I'm telling you a little bit about the story of my experience, but also telling you information. And you have to use, and this is probably the most important thing, a conversational tone. If you don't have a conversational tone and you talk monotone or like a robot, you don't it's brutal. Nobody wants to see that. That's why people aren't watching AI videos yet, because they sound non-conversational. They don't sound real. They sound like they're a robot, and nobody, I mean nobody wants that. And if you want to go and take the next step in it, depending on if you're using like Zoom webinars or if you're using a webinar on Microsoft Teams or whatever webinar platform you're using, you can use polls, Q&A, live chat, anything like that is going to be completely fine. But we have to make sure that we keep the webinar focused on the audience and not the vendors that are, yes, the vendor might want the business, so they're helping kind of promote it. But if the vendor steals the spotlight and they don't know who's on the call, the target customer, the target audience, all of that, the vendor is going to steal it or hijack it. And not only that, it's going to crash and burn, right? The webinar should showcase your company's expertise, not someone else's, and not someone else's tools. It's you as the MSP are the value add to make them excited about it. So this brings me to getting people to show up, because we've covered quite a bit so far, right? And if you haven't already, once again, like button, subscribe button, notification bell. I appreciate the heck out of it. Go and find the right audience. There are tons of ways to go get the right audience. Email lists, LinkedIn posts, social media ads to promote it. You could run a couple dollar a day campaign for social media ads. It's not going to break the camel's back. I promise you there, right? And you want to encourage your employees to share, especially if it's on a business network like LinkedIn. I totally get it if your employees don't want to share it out on Instagram, on Facebook, anything like that. But your employees, especially the salespeople, should be interested in sharing it out to their networks, and even asking their networks to share it out to help that reach as many people as possible. And give some kind of lead magnet if you can. Free checklist, white paper, anything like that, to encourage more people to actually sign up and learn from you. And then say, hey, by the way, if you get this lead magnet, you're also going to be invited to an exclusive webinar that's going to help you build your MSP business. That's huge. And most businesses out there want to grow. And then the most important thing, which I don't know if they're going to end up doing this, but we have to do a follow-up, right? We have to do a recap of the entire thing. Just like in a lot of my YouTube videos, I'll do a recap of everything, right? So how to make a webinar not suck, the pain points that obviously went through it. But we have to plan and rehearse. We have to make sure it's engaging. We have to keep it focused on the audience and not the vendors who are licking their chops for more customers. We have to make sure we get the right audience there. And then once again, that follow-up. But also, everyone should be recording their webinar. And especially after you record it, you have it. Watch it. Again, especially if you're the presenter. Yes, I too hate my own voice. Editing YouTube videos might as well be nails on a chalkboard for me. But that's the only way I'm going to get better. That and feedback from you guys, which is why I say if you're learning something, if you didn't like this video, give it a thumbs down. If you like this video, hit the like button. Let me know what you liked in this video, because that's ways that I can get better information to make better videos, right? Summarize the key takeaways of all of it, just like I did in this video. And then some kind of call to action. Most people are going to book a consultation, but download a guide. Check out our video series, something like that. Ask them, hey, connect on LinkedIn. If you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, by the way, you are absolutely welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. All you have to do is go over to linkedin.com, and I believe it's /Harry T. Barron. I'll find out right now in real time. /IN/Harrison T. Barron. And I will leave a link down below. But if you want to connect with me, I would love to connect with you. I love connecting with my audience. Truly, send a little message in there. Hey, Harrison, love the YouTube videos. Or, hey, Harrison, grow some hair. Whatever you want to say to me. I appreciate it either way. But you have to take it to the next level. I just can't imagine you're taking time out of people's day. You're asking them to watch something, and for you to not load it up with value, to rehearse it, and to ask for them to do something afterwards that would benefit them, free or paid, in my opinion, is highway robbery. You have asked that person to give up their most valuable asset, and that's time. You can always make more money. It's not that hard, right? But there is a limit on how much time you have in a day. And you're asking that person to give up their time in their day, just like you guys come on YouTube. I would be devastated, or I am truly, like, I don't really care about the negative comments. Like, if you're like, hey, you're bald, you suck, fine. But if you go on here and you're like, dude, I watched that whole video, it's 25 minutes of my day that I'll never get back, crushes me, because I truly try to put as much effort as I possibly can in making amazing YouTube videos. I want to respect your time just as much as hopefully you respect my time and the work that I put into it. If you don't put in the work on your webinar to make it amazing, to rehearse it, to make people that jump on that feel great because they're like, this is full of value that helps my business grow, you're wasting everyone's time, including your team that's on the call, you who looks silly on the webinar, and then everyone else who actually attended. And this is not a stab at them. This is not something that was isolated to just this one webinar. I see it all over the place. Truly care about your audience. It's not that hard. Put together some great information and rehearse it. It is so clear that you haven't rehearsed it, because if you did, you would have caught all the little hiccups. It would have sounded correctly, and you would have added slides and tweaked it to where it sounds amazing. Yes. Is it a new webinar? Of course it is. Does it take time to rehearse it? Of course it does. But you can make one webinar work to get you hundreds, if not thousands, of leads if it's great information and truly helps an MSP. So I hope at the end of this video, I've earned a like button, a subscribe button, notification bell, and you've learned something from this. I love the heck out of you guys, as always, for checking out these videos, and I will see you guys on the next one.